If you want to go beyond the rink and into the dressing room, there's only one place to be, the HockeyVerse, with your hosts, Michael Trakos and Johnny Legend.
Okay, let's get into this. When Ryan Whitney said on the Spittin' Chicklets podcast last week that Matthew Tkachuk was the best American-born player, it seemed like the kind of thing someone from Boston would say, you know, to troll those fans of the Maple Leafs. The best American? Yeah. Had Ryan Whitney forgotten about Auston Matthews? You know, the guy who scored 60 goals and won a Hart Trophy last year? Yeah, but that was the regular season. In the playoffs, as Matthew Tkachuk proved in a first-round series win against the Bruins, are a completely different animal. And in a 4-2 win in Game 1 against the Maple Leafs on Tuesday, Panthers forward was once again a total beast. Not only did Tkachuk pick up 3 assists to hammer home Whitney's point that Tkachuk should be up for consideration as the best U.S. player, but with 5 goals and a playoff-leading 14 points in 8 playoff games, you can make the argument that the Arizona-born winger has emerged as the NHL's best player, period. The question is now, how do the Leafs cage this two-headed monster that is Tkachuk and Sam Bennett, who in addition to hitting everything that moved on Tuesday, also picked up his 4th goal and 7th point in the playoffs? Because while the Leafs were lucky to not have to face Brad Marchand and the Bruins, these Panthers, with Tkachuk, Bennett, Radko Gudas, and many, many other tough sons of bitches, might be the toughest opponent they'll face in the playoffs. With that and more, on today's episode of the HockeyVerse.
You just found the world's latest and greatest hockey, sports, and entertainment podcast. This is the HockeyVerse. On today's episode, we recap the Leafs Game 1 loss to the Panthers and look ahead to how Toronto can handle Matthew Tkachuk in Game 2. We're also joined by Florida hockey reporter George Richards, who gives us the view from Miami and why the Panthers might be a much fiercer opponent than many of us imagined. By the way, check out our show notes for timestamps if you want to fast forward to your favorite part. Also, if you want to be on a future episode, email your question to heyhockeyverse@gmail.com. Now, can somebody try and stop Matthew Tkachuk, please?
What was that like watching the game?
Oh, my God. Like, every time somebody was hit, it was him.
Yeah.
Every time somebody got hit, it was him. Like, he was everywhere.
You couldn't help but notice him.
Did he come off the ice?
Oh, it was just him, like, mowing down on that mouth guard.
Oh, my God. Yeah, it's never covered his teeth, ever. Like, it's not even the shape of his mouth.
Yeah. It's funny, eh? Like, a couple guys do that in the NHL now.
Yeah.
Where the mouth guard is just hanging out of your mouth and you're chewing on it like a piece of, like, I don't know, beef jerky or something.
Yeah. Yeah, just get some gum, man.
Yeah, but okay. So the vibes at Scotiabank Arena were so different than Game 1 against the Lightning. You know, when the Leafs got like booed off first period and I think second period and after the game, and it was just like, you know, it was on pins and needles, right? Everything bad that happened, it was like deadly quiet. After the first goal that Florida scored, the crowd was like still vibing really into it. And we were like, what crowd is this? Like, how was it for you? Like after that Panthers goal, were you okay? Like thinking the Leafs are going
I was okay because you remember what happened last Game 1?
Oh, it was a disaster. What do you mean?
This was totally different.
Yeah. This wasn't nearly as bad as that.
Yeah, so it was a different feeling. Like I even texted you. You were down at the game in the press box and I texted you, man, if the Leafs play like this, Florida doesn't have a chance. 5 seconds later, Florida scored, and I'm like, well, maybe I spoke too soon.
Maybe they have a chance.
The Leafs really did start that game on fire.
Yeah, it was in the, you know what, you take away some of those really good saves by Bobrovsky, and you know, Toronto's power play didn't really look that dangerous even at the best of times. Yeah, you know what, I wouldn't be too worried about this series.
There were times when the Leafs had control of the puck in the Florida end, throwing it around like they were little kids.
Yeah.
And then it was Bobrovsky. And
in one line.
Yeah.
That line, though.
That is
Tkachuk,
some kind of line.
Holland landing zone, Sam Bennett, who I've got a Sam Bennett story because I did a big feature on him the year that he got drafted. Lives not too far from where Johnny and I are doing this podcast. Out by the old drive-in movie theater.
Oh, does he live down there?
Yeah. Oh. So, yeah, I went to his place. Oh, man. You should see this thing. It looks like it was bullet ridden because he's like, his dad was like, hey, if you can put it through the garage, or I think he bet him. He's like, I bet you can't do that. And then when he did it, he was like, well, maybe you're going to make it to the NHL. That's a pretty hard shot.
So now, picture that. He put it through a metal garage door. Imagine being a goalie.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I spent the day with him. Let's go into the Sam Bennett story here. Okay, so
go ahead.
Do you remember draft combine that year? They make you do, like push-ups.
Yeah, the chest presses, the vertical jump. And
VO2 max and, broad jump and, all that stuff. One of the things is pull-ups. And Sam Bennett, how many pull-ups do you think he did? This is his draft year. He's supposed to go, maybe, I think he's the number 1 rated pick out of North America that year.
I have no idea. I don't remember at all. Zero. Pull-up's tough to do, man.
I don't know how well like you used to be in the fitness training world.
Yeah.
How much does a pull-up translate to the hockey game?
Probably zero.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, so he gets 0 and he takes it to heart, right? So it's all everyone's talking about. Oh my God, this guy's supposed to be like, not Connor McDavid, but a top pick. Can't even do a pull-up. That's a little concerning, is it not? You'd think he's going to be an NHLer. So I convince him. I'm like, hey, I want to spend the day with you. So he's like, yeah, okay. So here's my day. I go work out. He was working out specifically just on pull-ups.
Oh, really?
After that. Like, just was like, you know what? I can't do a pull-up. Every day he was just working at it. So that he gets to the draft was in Florida that year, funny enough. And any team that asked him, he's like, well, what about the 0 pull-up kind of thing? He's like, I'll do it right now. So that's the kind of mentality that the Leafs are facing now with a guy like Sam Bennett. It's been he started out in Calgary. He wasn't the top pick, but would he go 4th overall that year? Gets traded to Florida, reunites with Matthew Tkachuk. Bennett's now a center. And a guy that back in the day when he was playing for Kingston.
He was a winger, right?
Well, was playing for Doug Gilmour, was the coach. And really modeled his game after Doug Gilmour. And the guy and that's why the whole pull-up thing came to be. It's like, you're going to be Doug Gilmour, but you can't do a pull-up. Listen, this guy can do a pull-up, and this guy is like, I don't want to say he's Doug Gilmour, but you see the elements of that, where it's like him and Tkachuk are just, tell me what playoff team wouldn't want that on a line?
Well, we talked about that before the game. Who would you want to start a team with? Right? Yeah. If you were going to start a team.
Took a lot of flack for that, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Tkachuk, yeah.
Why? I mean, look. It's
a, you know what?
Complete game.
Yeah. And you know what? I think we're going to see, because I wrote about Tkachuk for the Hockey News this week, and part of me writing about him, I interviewed Don Granato, who coached Tkachuk and Auston Matthews were on this national development team program out in the States when they were 17 and 18 years, or 16 and 17 years old. And he said they were the fiercest competitors in practice. They didn't like fight each other or like hit each other, like get dirty or anything, but it was like Tkachuk would go down the ice and win a puck battle, score a goal or whatever. The next time they did the drill, Matthews like raised the bar and did the same thing. And it was just like both those guys pushing each other. So, you know, I didn't think Matthews had a typical Matthews game. I'm expecting a little bit more out of him game 2.
Yeah. You know what? He started off a lot better than he started off the last series, though. Like, he was trying to hit guys. He was making some plays. I think I texted you that Matthews about to take over the series. He's got to do it now, though. And then Tkachuk did it. So hopefully they have that back and forth now, and Matthews takes it to that next level for game 2.
Did you think the lines kind of played into it? Because they had Matthews away from Marner in game 1, and I didn't understand the logic behind it.
I don't understand why you wouldn't put out the exact same lines that you won the last game with.
They were cooking.
Number 2, I don't know why Keefe tries to match the lines. He's horrible at it.
Honestly,
his line matching is horrible.
So
they played their best games when he didn't have the option to match the lines. Just keep putting them out there, man. You have at the most 21 games left. Put them out there.
I get it. He mixes lines a lot. That's his thing now, I guess. But it's too much.
Too much.
I would hate that as a player.
Unless
constantly getting changed.
Unless you're going to mix them by double shifting. Like, okay, one guy comes off and then he joins Matthews and Marner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Double shift them, man. You got to win the series.
So lines were what? Matthews, Nylander, and Knies.
That was dumb. That was dumb. Matthews, Marner, and Knies. That's got to be the top line.
Yeah.
Yarncrux was horrible, horrible yesterday.
How about this? Matthews, Marner, Bunting, Knies, Tavares, Nylander.
Nylander's not playing well, man. He has flashes, but he's vanishing Willie.
Would you get Bunting in your top six? He had a good game.
I like Knies on the top line.
How about Yarncrux? You going to keep him there?
I don't even want Yarncrux on the ice.
So switch him with Bunting.
Switch him with the Wayne train. I don't want Yarncrux. I don't.
The Wayne train's not getting there anymore.
I'm just trying to make a point of how bad he played last night.
It was the lines are. I don't know what line you put on the Tkachuk line though. Like I don't know if you have to fire with fire, and that's how I would do it. I wouldn't go mess with it, and if those guys are going to see a lot of time, I don't want O'Reilly taken from Matthews' minutes.
No,
I would put Matthews toe to toe with those guys, and say, this is their best guys. You're our best guys. Mm-hmm. Fight it out.
Yeah. Yeah, because, they were taking pucks off each other like crazy last night, right? When Matthews was on the ice or Marner was on Marner took some big hits last night too.
They all kind of, it was throughout the whole lineup in both teams.
You don't usually see Marner get hit.
Yeah.
Like, not solid anyway.
That's the Tkachuk factor, eh? Yeah. One of the stories was he was at, under 17 tournament, and he caused a brawl against Russia that I had to look this up. This is the same thing Don Granato was telling me about this, and he goes, you got to understand, there was never ever a fight between U.S. and Russia. It just doesn't happen at a U17 tournament. And he's like, that fight doesn't happen unless Matthew Tkachuk's on the team.
And he did the old Theo Fleury, eh?
Yeah. One of the guys is like, Casey Fitzgerald even fought in front of the bench, and I'm like, I looked up Casey Fitzgerald's stats. I'm like, this guy's 5'10", 6 penalty minutes a year.
That's great.
It's just mayhem when he's on the ice.
You got to do something, and that's like father, like son, right?
Yeah. So, how about this? Does Toronto even need to play this kind of bang and crash kind of game? They played it against Tampa. They played fine, but
they played it against Tampa because
their identity now. Or
they
what?
Played it against Tampa because they had to. And we talked about that before the playoffs started. They had to outgoon Tampa Bay if they were going to win that series.
Is that their identity, though?
No, but I think it kind of carried over a little bit. I think maybe after last night, they realized that this is not going to be dirty stuff. It's just going to be hard hitting, right? They got Tkachuk a bunch of times, and he just popped back up and kept playing. He didn't complain. He didn't lay on the ice like he'd been shot.
Hey, the Shen hit on Tkachuk was the biggest thing I've seen from a Leaf player this whole season.
And McCabe laid him out, too.
And here's the mistake. Shen hits Tkachuk. McCabe hits Tkachuk. But then when you get Brody trying to play that game,
not good.
And he gets caught between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, where he was going to throw the hit and then decided not to, then he's caught in no man's land. Mm-hmm. And that leads to a goal, right?
I think overall, it wasn't the rough. I think the rough was fine. The hitting was fine. The Leafs played fine. The three things were that flipping dump out that they do.
Yeah.
Every time. It's never icing, right? The defense pinches on the forecheck every time, cuts off the boards.
Yep.
And Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
Bobrovsky was a big problem last night.
Yeah, you can solve the stretch passes and the little kind of Hail Mary kind of passes that they do. And you can, just move the puck a little quicker out of the back end, but how do you solve a problem like Bobrovsky?
I don't know, man. You guys gotta hope the other Bobrovsky shows up and not the 2-time Vezina.
Well, the Leafs lucky they didn't have Vasilevsky show up, and then instead they get Bobrovsky, who, like you mentioned, he's won 2 Vezinas, but it feels like it happened forever ago.
Yeah, it does, and it wasn't that long ago.
No, He was a Columbus Blue Jacket. He won both of them there, right?
Yeah.
And since he signed that contract, he hasn't been the same goalie. Let's be honest.
No, he hasn't.
He's the richest goalie,
highest paid goalie in the league.
Yeah, and he hasn't played that way. Like Alex Lyon, who probably a lot of Leaf fans maybe are not even that familiar with.
That's who I thought we were going to end up with. And then when I saw Bobrovsky go in, what was it, Game 5 in Boston? I'm like, oh no.
Even so in the morning skate in Game 1, Lyon was off the ice first. So we all went to his stall and talked to him. And Bobrovsky's changing by himself, and Lyon was just happy to, shoot the shit, so to speak. And that told me that, okay, he's probably not starting.
Yeah.
But he was interesting, undrafted, and, mostly spent his career in the minors bouncing between, I think, like 3 or 4 minor league teams. But end of the season, the Panthers don't get into playoffs without Alex Lyon.
He finished off 6 wins, right? 6 wins in a row to finish the season.
Bobrovsky was just awful at that time. I think I have...
and it's crazy because the Leafs dominated Florida in the season, right?
And even against Boston, I think you just mentioned, like Lyon was the starter for the first 3 games against the Bruins. And, since then, it's been, what about Bob? And he hasn't been great, but, a couple of overtime wins where he allows only 3 goals and then wins a wild 7-5 game against the Bruins.
He did get a little lucky last night, too. There was a couple of solid posts, and he got that one right into the open net that hit the knob of his stick.
Yeah. But he's the real deal.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's not like it's like
scary.
Some no one.
It's scary.
The Alex Lyon, though, he's an interesting guy. Like he was really bigging up Samsonov, saying that the reason, he goes, the difference between a minor league goalie and a legit number 1 goalie is not playing ability. They all play the same. He goes, it's literally just confidence. He's like, you have to be the baddest son of a bitch.
And after that game, when they asked Samsonov, he's like, yeah, I'm going to go home, eat some food, and see you tomorrow.
And Lyon was saying that Samsonov is that guy. He goes, where he just doesn't care. And he goes, I try to be that guy where it's like, yeah, I don't care. It's Auston Matthews. I'm gonna stop him because I'm better than him. And he's like, you can tell yourself that. he's like, I talk to people to try to work on that. He's like, it's kind of hard to believe it if you don't believe it, right? Mm-hmm. But he goes, Samsonov, he just believes. He goes, I forget what the word was. I don't say a beast, but he said something along those lines where like, this guy is just like a stone cold. He's a legit number 1. Well, he's got that mentality.
Bobrovsky's on another planet.
Bobrovsky,
like literally on another planet. Remember that?
Weird enough where he can be number 1.
Well, didn't he go through that whole thing where he's like, I'm an alien from another planet?
I love it, man. Goalies are just weird.
Yeah. Yeah, but goalie's a normal guy. He's not very good.
No, if they're normal, or too nice, they're not good. They're usually a backup goalie, to be honest, because they have to be good in the room, right?
Or E-bug.
Yeah. What'd you think of Matthew Knies, man? That was a hell of a goal, huh?
Oh, it was great how he tipped that 1 goal past his own goalie, and then about 30 seconds later he went, same shift, went down and scored that goal. Didn't even get excited about the goal, was still pissed off that he tipped that one past Samsonov. I like that.
Yeah. So he always has a game like that where he has like a really like 3 good shifts and then 3 like really brutal shifts.
Well, he's still 10 games of NHL experience?
Oh yeah. I'm not faulting him. No. That goal was insane.
Oh, it was great. And even the one that he missed, that he tried to put backwards through his legs, and it almost snuck through the 5-hole on him too.
We were debating. Remember, we were doing this with Ryan Kennedy about who he reminds me of, and. What were the other suggestions? Someone said Jack Eichel. And I was like, he just doesn't have the height there. I said Pat Maroon before he got old. But then when I said Tuch, a lot of guys were like, yeah, I could see that. I can't remember what the other one was.
I said Cam Neely.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
he looked more like Cam Neely playing against college kids than he.
Someone said Tyler Biggs.
Tyler Biggs. Oh boy.
And then that's when I was like, maybe like a Boone Jenner. But I'm like, I think he's a little better than Boone.
Boone Jenner.
Yeah.
Best name in hockey ever.
Like Boone. Lowered the Boone.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I've been impressed with Matthew Knies. He's just big with really good hands.
And confidence.
Yeah.
He knows what to do, and he knows what to do. So he'll make that move that you wouldn't expect from a young guy with that much pressure, right?
No.
And Auston Matthews is one of his heroes at Arizona. Even though they're not that different in age.
No.
Still a guy they looked up to.
It's weird. And Tkachuk is literally, or technically, a Arizona-born kid.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at his, Hockey DB page.
Yeah, what's going on down there in Arizona? What are they putting in the water down there? A little
maple
syrup?
You know what I was told? Well, with Matthews, it's a weird one because whatever, and I guess Knies, but with Tkachuk, there's just a lot of guys who retire up there. They love it.
Well,
because it's an active, a retirement community. So you get a lot of good former NHL players, but also former, even just minor pro players are up there.
Keith Tkachuk finished his career down there, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they win national tournaments. I know, at different age groups. It's they've always had a pretty strong program where I think Ray Whitney is a coach up there. There's a bunch of ex-NHLers who are all coaching minor league teams, whether it's I think it's called they call it the Junior Bobcats or something like that. I can't remember. Arizona Bobcats.
And I heard somebody talking about the fact that they're all so tight-knit is because there's not a lot of places for the kids to play hockey down there. So they all kind of come up together. They all play together. Even Matthews will still play with teenagers when he's down there in the summer because there's just nowhere to work out. There's
it's not
nowhere
there's
to
30, how many rinks are there in Toronto?
Oh, geez, how many are there in Newmarket?
And you still can't get ice.
No, you can't.
So it's ridiculous. Here's my prediction for Game 2, Johnny. We're going to see a lot of penalties.
You think so?
Against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Did you see Paul Maurice's post-game?
No, I didn't.
Well, during the game, he makes this gesture, right?
With the 1 and the 5?
He's got the 1 and the 5, signaling Toronto's had 1 penalty. We've had 5. Not going to say anything to you, but it's just kind of like that. And then the post-game, he goes, we have accepted the fact that we're going to be in the penalty box more than our opponent. It's become our reputation. Again.
Mm-hmm.
He made a point of saying that Matthew Tkachuk, in the second half of the year, actually stayed out of the penalty box. So, that's a bunch of choir boys over there, Johnny.
He stayed out of the penalty box last night, really.
Yeah. He harnesses that emotion.
He didn't do
better
anything,
than anyone.
He didn't do anything dirty. He just played hard.
Dude, Luke Shen hit him. I thought that was going to be an opportunity for him to go Drew Doughty on Luke Shen and, retaliate. Just picked himself up and got right back in there and was the factor again.
Didn't even spit out that mouth guard.
Yeah. His stick went flying too.
That Trouba hit the other night.
Ooh. Where do you stand on that?
Good hit. Don't skate with your head down, man, or else it's going to be stars and a yard sale.
It's a time and a place for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I see that hit in, middle of February in a nothing game on a Wednesday. Okay, why are you going out to kill someone, right? Rangers are down in that game. Their season was on the line. They're pissed off. And guys crossing through in a playoff game.
And did you see the irony in that?
What's
Against
the
New Jersey Devils, how many of those did Scott Stevens lay out? That looked just like a Scott Stevens hit.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's reverse.
Sweet
right?
irony. And then the New Jersey Devils fan that choked out the Rangers fan in the crowd. You see that? And put him right to sleep.
I saw that, and I saw another guy just throwing bombs at a Rangers fan. I've been to games at MSG and at, what's it called now? Is it Prudential or whatever in Newark? The Newark one is not like MSG, but the crowd around, it's New York fans, right? And I remember I was covering the one where Sean Avery called Brodeur Fatso. Remember in the line?
I remember that. Yeah.
Fatso
that
wouldn't
was
shake my hand.
Same game when he was waving in front of his face.
Yeah, they made the Sean Avery rule after that. And then it was Brodeur refused to shake Avery's hand. And he goes, Fatso wouldn't shake my hand.
Miss those guys in the league, eh?
Those are fun series to cover because you just go train hopping back and forth. Really cool. All right. So
your prediction for Game 2 is a lot of penalties for the Leafs.
Leafs win Game 2. I think there's going to be a lot of penalties on Toronto's side, but yeah, I can't see. Yeah, I can.
What'd you think of Liljegren going in instead of Hall or Gustafsson? Played pretty good. He had that one beautiful play where he shot it off the end boards and it came right out in front. He did that on purpose.
I think he had an okay game. He wasn't great or anything, but it just
he didn't cost them anything. That's the key.
Yeah.
With that 6 defenseman, he's got to not cost you, and Hall was costing.
You're playing with Giordano, just make sure the puck stays in the other end.
Yeah, just don't make a mistake. Just get it, dump it out.
Yeah, and I think he's a better option than Gustafsson if you're going to have him for mostly 5-on-5. Gustafsson, he's your second power play unit defenseman, right? That's where he's going to shine. But yeah, if you're not going 11-7, I'd rather have Liljegren than Gustafsson. And I don't think we're going to see Hall.
You're never going to see Hall again. You'll see Timmins before you'll see Hall.
Yeah, I just think, unfortunately, he goes through these stretches. I think he's a better defenseman than he was showing, obviously. But he goes through these stretches where you can't have him on the ice.
I think he makes a mistake, and then he tries to make up for it and makes another mistake, and then it gets out of hand.
He honestly hasn't been the Justin Hall of his highest caliber since
the one that
Muzzin
got him the contract.
Yeah. I mean, once Muzzin went down and wasn't Muzzin again, you could see it. It affected Hall.
I'll say it again. How good would it be to have a Muzzin out there?
Yeah. Well, there's not going to be a Muzzin, but the Leafs are healthy, and I'm excited to see what happens in Game 2.
Yeah. I think the Leafs win it. I think Samsonov's going to have a great game.
We'll see. The strength of Vasilevsky all the years was he was capable of bouncing back after a bad outing.
And I think Samsonov's the same guy. Same guy in his head. Maybe not the same goalie, but he's the same mentality.
Yeah. Did you see Joe Pavelski 4 goals?
Yeah.
He's like our age, eh?
Yeah. I had one of my buddies texting me. He goes, Joe Pavelski's got 2 goals. Not bad for an old man. I look at the end of the game, he's got 4. I'm like, geez, he needed 6.
And they lost.
He needed 6.
Ridiculous. He signed an extension for next year, too. Huh?
How about Sutter getting fired before his extension even started?
Well.
And we called it.
Oh, yeah.
We called it. We said he's gone.
So the Calgary Sun, I think it was. I don't want to mess up my papers, but there was an article saying that the the snowflakes had Sutter fired. Called the players snowflakes, and it's true though.
Yeah,
but that's not why he got fired. No. They fired the GM, and no GM comes in and just inherits a coach.
No,
they want to bring their own guy in,
especially not a Sutter.
Yeah, and I don't think, and it was Don Maloney had a press conference talking about why the decision was made, and he specifically said the way that Sutter coaches wasn't conducive. He's like, players don't appreciate that now. We talked to players, we talked to agents. They didn't want that. He should never have said that.
No.
He should have just said, it was a tough year. The GM that we hire, we want him to bring in his identity, blah, blah, blah. Now you made the players look like a bunch of snowflakes. I'm sorry, it's brutal.
Yeah, they grossly underachieved this year, though.
I wouldn't be happy if I was Kadri or Huberdeau or one of those guys, and you threw the blame on the players, not Sutter.
Yeah,
Sutter couldn't coach this year. I'm sorry.
Everybody talking about how good that trade was when they traded Tkachuk and got Uyghur and Huberdeau.
It's an awful trade.
In hindsight, for sure.
Yeah.
But when it happened, everybody's like, I can't believe he pulled that off.
Yeah. Well, his hands are tied. Tkachuk basically said, I want out of here. And I think Florida was the number 1 destination when I talked to him.
I guess Florida is going to be for everybody. Weather, taxes,
and they built something there or are building something there. I think they're going to be
around for a while.
Last year, they're number 1. It took them a while to find out how to play under Maurice. Next year, I think it's going to be Toronto 1, Florida 2, Tampa 3, no Boston in the playoffs. And I think there's an opportunity for Buffalo to maybe be 3.
Yeah, what was it, Tkachuk? Did I read it in your article where he said we beat the number 1 team, now we're playing the number 2 team?
Yeah.
I gotta start remembering where I read stuff.
That's awesome.
So who do you think is going to be the? So I think it's going to be Samsonov's going to be the star of Game 2. Who do you think is going to be?
Willie Styles, man. William Nylander.
You think Vanishing Willie's going to?
Everyone is just on William Nylander. What is it? Is like every 3 weeks the fans just come out and just like, oh yeah, we don't like him again.
Well,
and then he does some great plays and we like him again. Like
I think what it is everybody is getting dirty and they're getting in there and he's not.
Yeah. I think he's got so much more to give. Did you see that play? He gets it on his backhand. He goes around the defenseman, and there's a clear line where he's just got to skate right in the middle.
Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't go.
And instead, he looped around and blah, blah, blah.
He did it twice in a row. Two rushes in a row he did that.
So he's drafted the same year as Sam Bennett. That was always the knock on Nylander when I wrote the book. Sam Bennett, the day I spent with him where I went to work out with him and all that stuff, we also went to the rink on Mount Albert Side Road in Sharon. And him and his buddy wasn't a legit hockey player or whatever. His best friend, though, a lot bigger than Sam, big dude. He basically said, put him like in the slot area or like where a defenseman would be in front of the net. And Sam just like drove hard to the net, and while this guy was just trying to
drive through him.
Yeah, and he just worked on that for maybe a good 40 minutes. No messing around like, hey, let's just go bar down. Like it was just, again. Mm-hmm. Okay, really lay into me. Okay, lean on me. And that's how Sam Bennett plays.
And while he was doing that, Willie was at the barber getting his hair styled.
Yeah, I still think William Nylander is going to show up in a big way because he tends to answer critics.
And I think that's what it is. It's not that I don't like him. But you're not going to win fans in Toronto, which is like think of who they love. It's everybody who works hard.
Yeah.
If you're not working,
Ryan O'Reilly's a fan fave.
If you're not working, Luke Shen now is fan favorite. Even you go into baseball, right? Look at who their favorites always are. It's always the underdogs, the hard workers.
Kevin Pillar, man.
Kevin Pillar. Remember John McDonald, right?
Johnny Mac.
Yeah, they love John McDonald.
I like Tula at the time.
Yeah. So. I mean, unless you're going to work hard, they're going to be on you.
All right. Hey, we're going to go to the phones. I want to talk to, we got our buddy George Richards live from Florida. He writes for FloridaHockeyNow.com. Why don't we say, want to give him a call?
Yeah, let's see what's going on down there in old Florida.
All right, we're going live to Florida where we've got George Richards of FloridaHockeyNow.com and 7 Sports Extra. How you doing there, George?
I'm good. What's going on?
Well, what's going on is the Florida Panthers surprised a lot of Leafs fans, on Tuesday night in Game 1 and really taking it to them. Matthew Tkachuk, 3 assists, 9 hits. This guy, I wrote in the Hockey News today's edition that this guy is basically, if the Conn Smythe voting is happening today, he's probably going number 1. What did you make of Matthew Tkachuk?
Very, very, probably took 9 hits too, right? I mean, every time I saw him, he was, getting hit by somebody. And that's the thing about Matthew. He's not a guy that runs his mouth and shies away. I mean, he took the contact and then he'd turn around and hit somebody else. And, he's gonna back up he's gonna back it up with whatever he's got. I mean, he's not just a physical guy. He's a guy that produces offensively. 3 assists last night, like you said. I believe 2 of them were primary assists. The first goal from Cousins was right off a shot of his. And listen, I mean, he's a guy that. He's an alpha, right? I mean, he's one of those guys that you follow. The Panthers are definitely taking their cues from him, and he's performing, no doubt about it.
What would you make of Tkachuk there, Johnny?
Well, we talked about before the series has even started. I mean, I picked, for the record, George, I picked Florida in 7 over Boston. I was like the only one in the world that did. Other than probably people in Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and
I had Boston in 6.
Yeah. And one of the main reasons was Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, I say he's just the mean son of a gun, and we were joking that like he's gone. He went through that Boston Bruins lineup, sort of like John Wick does, taking body after body, and it's not just him; it's Sam Bennett. This team is physical, and do you think that played into Panthers' hands in Game 1? Or, I was at the game. I was saying to whoever was next to me, I was like, Toronto's playing that tough game too. I wonder if that's really the game plan for the Leafs, or if they got suckered into kind of the Panther hockey there.
Yeah, no, I think that's more the case. I think Toronto changed their game to play more like Florida. And listen, a year ago, Florida was playing like Toronto. I mean, that's just how, that's why Paul Maurice is in Florida right now, is because, the Panthers thought that they were just going to be able to flip a switch last year in the playoffs and start playing that tough playoff hockey after not playing it all season long. And it doesn't really work. I mean, you look at how Tampa took away all the space and collapsed on guys, and Florida could get nothing going against Tampa last year in round 2. And now Florida's playing that style and have been since Paul Maurice got here, or at least trying to. It took them 3-4 months to get it, but it looks like they've got it down pretty good now. So to your point, yeah, I think Toronto was like, well, this is how Florida plays, so we're going to try and do it. I thought Toronto did a good job of doing it. I mean, they were a lot more physical, I think, than Florida thought, even though Florida made points in the press conferences afterwards that they were downplaying it, right? But they mentioned it. So it was something maybe Florida didn't expect, that they were going to take hits from Toronto. I think they were more expecting a more open style game from them, and Florida thinks they can be more physical. So we'll just see how it goes, and obviously it'll be interesting to see how Game 2 goes and how Toronto comes out.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you hear people talking now. It's like Toronto Maple Leafs are the thuggish team, and now in the NHL,
yeah,
like they've replaced the Bruins. And I agree with you. I think Toronto can play that game. They got Luke Shen for that reason. They got Jake McCabe for that reason. These guys weren't Leafs to start the year. But like, aside from the physicality, what I saw last night in Game 1 was, Sergei Bobrovsky playing like the guy who won 2 Vezinas. And what a strange season it's been for him, because as any hockey fan knows, it wasn't Bob who got the Panthers into the playoffs in the final weeks of the season. It was Lyon, and the beginning of the playoffs, it was Lyon. Bobrovsky wasn't the starter. But really, as much as Matthew Tkachuk led the Panthers over the Bruins, it was Bobrovsky coming in as well. And fine, it was one of those scenarios where he gave up a ton of goals, but when he shut the door when he needed to, and you saw it against the Leafs as well. That save on William Nylander, where he sticks the toe out, that's a game changer. What have you made of Bobrovsky's play down the stretch, and or not really down the stretch, I'm sorry, but this season, George, and is this as good as you've seen him?
Yeah, no, for sure. Last night was as good as Bobrovsky's been, and he's a guy that, listen, I've known him, since the Columbus days, and
right.
And he always says he doesn't really care about the stats. Yes, he got 2 Vezinas because of his statistics, but since he's been in Florida, he's just a guy that wants to get the W. And I think we saw last year he really improved his game, but he was still giving up 2 or 3. His stats weren't terrific, but they were much improved. This year he had a rough spot. November was terrible for Sergei Bobrovsky, to the point where he was not an NHL quality goalie in November. December, January got stronger. And I think we've really seen him this playoff series, ever since he got back in place of Lyon, really play well. He didn't, I think he'd like to have Game 4 back against the Bruins when they scored, I think 3 goals on him in the third period. But he saved Florida in Game 5, because Florida had no business winning that game in Boston, and that was all Sergei Bobrovsky. Game 6, he gives up 5, but it was like, who cares? I mean, there were 3 or 4 of those goals that he had zero chance to stop, but he stopped the ones that were important, like you said. and he was terrific again in Game 7. Not to mention, obviously, Tuesday night in Toronto. So, yeah, Sergei Bobrovsky, the pressure's on him, and he's been living up to it. And, yeah, I mean, he's just happy to play his part. And I think that's something that I don't know if people understand. That he wants to be one of the guys on this team. He looks at himself as just one of the guys. That's my, you have your job there. I have my job here. And, yeah, he's been doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, for a guy who's making the most money out of any goalie in the NHL, this guy is incredibly humble. He actually said that last night. He's like, I just appreciate the opportunity and trying to stay humble. He's like, I'm enjoying playoff hockey and just it's a great group of guys. I'm fortunate to be here. It's not the kind of talk you hear from a typical number 1A, like alpha goalie.
And it's actually kind of scary to hear that, because if he's just playing for fun and there's no pressure, and we get the old Bobrovsky we got to play against, and we got some problems coming. And especially with even the luck. He got a little bit of luck last night, a couple goal posts, and he got made one save, wide open net right off the knob of his stick.
No, he scares me. Yeah. If I'm a Leaf fan and Bobrovsky is dialed in, and like you said, George, you covered that Blue Jackets team that year where he was challenged by Torts, and all of a sudden he flipped a switch and took down the Tampa Bay Lightning. And very could have easily have gone to the conference final, and who knows how much further. He was just on fire, and I don't know. Do you see elements of that Bobrovsky kind of flickering right now?
A little bit, but you know what? That was such a different team, right? I mean, that Columbus team played a very defensive style of hockey where they'd be lucky to get 3 goals. If they got 3 goals, they usually won. I think that Bob knows if one goes in, it's not the end of the world in Florida, because this team can score, and this team has shown that it can bounce back. I mean, in Game 6, of the Boston series, Boston retook the lead twice in the third period, and Florida bounced right back. And I think that takes a little bit of the weight off Bob. Now there's a lot of pressure on him because, when they lose, he gets the heat for it for sure. And he knows that. He knows that's part of the deal. But yeah, I mean, it's just the mentality with him that he's just going to go in, and you can tell when Bob's going to have a good game, and you could see it last night when he made those 3 or 4 saves early. He looked calm. He wasn't chasing anything. He was sliding easily. He wasn't, didn't look panicked at all. If Bob starts off good, Bob usually ends up good.
Yeah. That's one of the things that scares the Leaf fans up here. So those are the 2 things that kind of scare the Leaf fans up here, is how good Matty Tkachuk's going to play and if Bobrovsky's back. So what, down in Florida, what's it look like with, what are they worried about on the Leaf side?
Well, I mean, the obvious things, right? I mean, that Toronto team can light you up at any minute. I mean, they've just got so much firepower and so many guys they can beat you. We saw glimpses of that last night in the second period, and then at the end when they were throwing everything they had at Florida. But just in watching Florida and the way they play now, under Paul Maurice, Florida with a lead is kind of hard to get off it, and they've been a very good team. In being able to shut down some teams and not, play dumb in the final minute. That used to be a thing here in Florida. Like if it was a 1-goal game with a minute left, you could almost, bet money that Florida was going to give up that game tying goal. Something stupid was going to happen, and now you don't, if something happens, it's probably on the goalie not making the save, because it's not the system of the team giving up an easy goal. They're just so good at collapsing and doing things and shutting teams down. So I think that anytime you talk about what people are looking for out of Toronto, it's that explosiveness. It's that way that they can take over a game, especially if you don't stay out of the box. If that high stick on Sam Bennett happens with 2 minutes and 30 seconds and not 45 seconds or whatever it is, that could have been a big problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, what do you make of Barkov there? It's funny because it's like all these years I kept calling him like the most underrated superstar, and I still think he's highly underrated for how good he is. And these playoffs are supposed to shine a spotlight on him. And last night again, it's just like Tkachuk. I don't want to say took his thunder, but I don't want to like. Have you even seen the Barkov that at his best right now, or is that still kind of almost like there's still more to give on his side?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people think that Barkov is Connor McDavid, and he's not. I mean, he's not. I mean, I think the most goals he has ever scored in his life was 39, 38 or 39. He's not that guy that's going to get you a hat trick every night, where Tkachuk might. And listen, but Barkov does everything else. I think he won 70% of his faceoffs on Tuesday night. He kills every penalty. In the final minutes of a 1-goal game, whether they're ahead or they're behind, Barkov's on the ice. I mean, there's a lot of things that the Florida Panthers absolutely count on Sasha Barkov to do that maybe they don't even count on Matthew Tkachuk to do. Matthew Tkachuk is getting the headlines. He's the guy that's going to be on the billboards in South Florida because he's that guy. He's that dynamic of a personality. He's the guy talking trash on and off the ice. That's not Sasha Barkov. He is not. No. He's not. I mean, and you say he's stealing his thunder. He absolutely is. But he has all year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he has all year. I mean, ever since Tkachuk got here, he's been the guy that you quote. I mean, he's terrific in that realm. He's the guy that you're gonna put on video and the highlight shows. Barkov's just going to go to work every day and get 2 assists and maybe a goal, and he's the guy you count on though. He's the guy that you want to watch.
Hey, before we let you
floor.
Hey, thanks, George. Before we let you go, I'm curious about the vibe in the South Florida because this is really, round 2 of the playoffs. I know you played, the Panthers played Boston in round 1, so it's an original 6 team, a big market. But, round 2, you got TNT covering these games now. It's really kind of like a really big opportunity for South Florida. And I know it's kind of like it didn't get off to a great start with the whole thing about, hey, Canadian residents can't buy tickets and whatever you want to make of that. And then there's the whole scheduling conflict. What are you expecting from the atmosphere when the series shifts to Florida? And is this kind of an opportunity to really kind of win some of those fans that, might be Lightning fans or might be on the fence?
Yeah, no, there are no Lightning fans in South Florida. I mean, they're 2 different markets. I mean, they're 4 hours away. I mean, there are more Maple Leaf fans in South Florida than there are Lightning fans. I mean, they just happen to be in the same state. I mean, it's a big opportunity for the Panthers because, I mean, this is a big event town, and people here love a winner. You got to remember how bad the Florida Panthers have been traditionally ever since they moved into this building in Sunrise. This is their first 1-0 series lead since 1997. They didn't get out of the first round since 1996. I mean, until last year. So, fans have been used to this team kind of letting them down, and I think people are jumping on and enjoying it and talking about it. But it's not the end all be all here. It just isn't. I mean, it's there's a lot going on down here. I got just some stuff on Twitter yesterday just trying to explain it. It's not the only game in town here. I mean, we've got the Miami Heat are playing the Knicks. That's kind of a big deal. We've got an F1 race here this weekend, kind of a big deal. I mean, they're kind of they are part of the talk of the town, but they're one of many conversations.
Yeah, it's a crowded sports market, and that's not like a knock against Florida. Mm-hmm. It's the reality. A lot going on. Yeah, it just is. And then listen, that arena is going to be 60-40, 50-50 Toronto fans. It is. They're going to come down here from Tampa, where there's a lot more Ontario on the west side of Florida. This over here, we're more Quebec. There'll be a lot of Canadian fans in the building because they're going to travel. They want to see their team.
and they're going to take advantage of Florida fans willing to make a couple bucks on selling their tickets. That's just reality, and that's just how it is. And the Panthers are used to it, and they're cool with it.
Hey, with the way that the Panthers are playing on the road, that might not be such a bad thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they've been very good on the road, no doubt.
Hey, George, we appreciate you coming on. Again, that's George Richards of FloridaHockeyNow.com and 7 Sports Extra. I think the series, I thought it was going to be a quick one. Now I'm not so sure. I think this is going to go...
it's going to turn 3 different times, right?
I'm going to say 6. I still say Leafs in 6, but Johnny's holding up a 5.
There you go.
Yeah, do you have any predictions before we let you go there, George?
Oh, listen, I thought Boston was going to win in 6, so what do I know? I don't know.
I know. Never trust a sports writer. Thanks again.
Exactly.
All right. For Johnny Legend, I'm Michael Trikos, and this was the HockeyVerse.
Thank you for listening to the HockeyVerse. If you enjoyed this show, please share the love by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and by introducing the HockeyVerse to your friends and family. Also, be sure to check out thehockeyverse.com. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter. It's specifically written for you, the diehard hockey fan. From insider news to opinion and analysis, our NHL-focused newsletter will entertain and equip you for the conversations of the day. We thank you for your support, and until next time, this is the HockeyVerse.